So let's have this conversation. It's a Tuesday, so we're going to talk about front desk, patient experience, patient life cycle, sales, communication, how to make a business successful. And so what I want to do is step it way back. We're going to start from the beginning. In the beginning, and actually step three in what I consider a 6-step ongoing process is understanding your patient's life cycle. And we could call that a client, we could call that a customer, we could call that a patient. So understanding your patient's life cycle within your practice is a very, very, very early on task project that you should have done and or are doing. And if you haven't done it, then you need to do it now. And that's why I'm rolling it out today. Everybody, I just gave a talk on the front desk on Friday to the private practice section of the American Physical Therapy Association. Got some great feedback on it. And I was really worried going in, I'm not going to lie, because I went high level and I went back to the beginning. And you put stuff, people want tactical stuff. They want a script for their front desk. They want to know how to manage a cancel call. So I took it back and I said, look, you all have access to all this information everywhere. It's on my freaking YouTube page everywhere. Go there now. It's Jerry Durham PT on my YouTube page. You can see how to handle a first call, how to handle a cancel call. Here's the point. Without understanding your patient's life cycle within your practice, you're chasing dreams. You're wasting your time, money, and energy. Unless you know where that person is in their journey with your business, unless you know where that journey originated, unless you know what the next step and the next step and the next step is, once you know what the goals of those phases and interactions are, then that script will be 100 times more valuable. The ROI, I can give you the same exact script I give everybody, right? If you don't know your patient life cycle, if you don't know what to do with the content, and the people say, so what do I do with this? Or the people don't understand the connection. And that's okay. I mean, that was me for the first 12 years of my freaking business, right? So there's nothing wrong with not knowing that. What I'm telling you is if you want to take 10 years off of the freaking learning curve, go back and do that first, right? So your patient's life cycle within your company, and actually it needs potential. Because patient implies that we're talking about someone who's arrived in the clinic. And I'm saying no. There are interactions, there are touch points, there is activity going on that are part of your experience and part of your brand and start of your business that started far before you even knew they existed. Then you found out they existed because they called or you got a fax or they walked in or they sent you an email or they filled out a web form. Then you knew they existed. The problem is most businesses still don't know they exist. And the way I know this is when I do secret callers and I call a clinic and they don't schedule me. For whatever reason, they choose not to schedule me. I never choose not to schedule. I move as far forward and as far in as they will allow me. And so when clinics don't put me on the schedule for whatever reason, and it's multiple reasons, my first follow-up question with the owner is, do you even know I called? And the majority of clinics, greater than 75%, greater than 75% of the secret callers I do where I'm not scheduled, so follow along, it's not all of them, where I'm not scheduled, 75% of those don't even know that a potential new client, new customer, new patient called their business, wanted to do business with them, and they don't know that person called. And if you understand your patient's life cycle, if you understand the phases of your patient's life cycle within your practice, then you understand the value of tracking things like this. So if you don't know I called, what use is a script? What use is customer service training? What use is more marketing? This is all my favorite thing. I need more marketing. I'm like, I just called your clinic as a potential new client, ready to spend my money with you, right? Whether it's insurance or out of pocket, still my fucking money. Ready to spend my money with you. And you don't know I called. And you don't know the reason why I wasn't scheduled. So how much business, this was the subtitle on my talk on Friday, how much business are you losing, how much money are you losing through your front desk on that first phone call that you don't even know you lost? You look and you see visits and you see cancels and you see drop-offs and you see completed plans of care and you calculate all that. And I'm like, well, we got to put a multiplier on that because you don't think everybody who called here is scheduled, do you? Well, no. I'm like, why aren't you tracking that business? As you go, do what? Spend more on marketing, right? This is where that patient life cycle fits in. You understand your marketing. Oops, sorry. You understand your marketing and how it connects to the next phase and the next phase and the next phase. And then it's more like a downhill flow. Because if you start to look at these phases and actually you look ahead, this is a cool thing. When you look, right now, you need to look back, right? You need to say, what are we doing before the patient arrives? What aren't we doing? What are we doing before they call? What messages are they seeing, right? That's what you have to do. You have to start reflecting back. I reflect forward because someone says, I need help with my cancel calls. And the first thing I say is, well, what are you doing on the first phone call to set people up for success so they won't cancel, right? Because what you do on that first phone call, when you manage and set expectations, when you build trust, that will go further to decrease a cancel call than do anything you could do when a person calls to cancel. If we have this map, the patient life cycle is like a map. I like this. We do a map for our patients, right? We give them a plan of care based on their desired outcome, right? So what's the desired outcome in your business? It's a completed plan of care. So what does that journey look like from right, completed plan of care? So the final destination is completed plan of care. So let's walk this thing backwards as far as we can into the marketing, right? What did the people who complete a plan of care tell us? What things do they like? Do they don't like? And then you start building in systems into your patient life cycle. Your patient life cycle is every single interaction and touch point that your potential patient who moves on to be a patient has with your business. So your marketing is the top end or is the beginning of that journey. Your website, your community events, your folders, your conversations with doctors, all that stuff is attraction, right? So that's the beginning of your patient's life cycle with your company when they first see you, become aware of your brand. They then choose to make connection with your brand. They call you, they email you, they fill out a web form, they walk in. The doctor says, I want you to go see these guys and sends a fax over, right? And now they are aware of you. That starts phase 2 where that front desk comes in. So phase 1 is the attraction phase. Phase 2 is when they come in contact with you, and that's the phase that your front desk owns. Once they arrive in the clinic and they are greeted by their provider, that starts phase 3, right? So, right, pretty straightforward so far, right? Attraction is owned by marketing. Phase 2, the selling phase, is owned by your front desk. Yes, I said that word, right? Then phase 3 is owned by the providers. And then phase 3 ends at a completed plan of care. And phase 4 is owned again by marketing, by front desk. Well, it's owned by marketing, but it's assisted with front desk and providers, right? That's emails, that's phone calls, that's all the things you do to keep people front of mind conscious. And really, that's what a patient life cycle looks like. Those are the 4 phases. Again, if you understand those 4 phases, and it's funny because, yeah, if you understand those 4 phases, then you can be more successful with getting more people on the schedule who arrive, pay, stay, and do your marketing with you. And so if you sit down today and start to map that out, just map out, go from big to small. And I would say reverse engineer it. That's how I started it. I think that's how most people start it. Don't think about what do they do first. Think about what's the last thing that happens and reverse engineer it. And then put down what you understand to be your current life cycle. And then look for missing parts, right? Right? Before I mapped out the patient life cycle, we used to just discharge people. Gone by, thank you. Send a note to the doctor, gone by, right? So when I first mapped it out, it was like, man, we just say goodbye and they disappear. I'm like, we got to add some stuff in here. So then I started to add stuff downstream, right? When you're working the other way and you stop it basically when people arrive in the clinic, right? You got to keep walking it back. What do we do? What do we do before they arrive in the clinic, right? What do we do here? Oh, and then you get back to that first phone call and go, okay, what happens before the first phone call? That's mapping out That's mapping out, hello, Amy, your patient's life cycle. Now, mind you, I haven't said the word experience yet. This is different than your patient's experience. You cannot, listen to this, you cannot create your patient's experience till you understand their life cycle in your business. Okay? So life cycle comes first, experience comes second. A life cycle is more of a fixed type map because, right, they call, they fax, they do this, right? All those things are fixed. They walk in, right? These are actions that happen. Now, the experience is created by you. This is what I love. The life cycle just is, but yet the experience is created by you. And those systems I was talking about building earlier and inserting into your life cycle, that creates the experience you want your patients to have. This is when you start to work on the scripts for the first phone call. So you see, I mean, it took us almost 14 minutes to get to the actual script, which is the stuff people are asking for, right? People are asking for scripts. They're asking for customer service training. I'm like, these will be far more valuable if we figure out your patient life cycle and then the experience you want to create. And the experience, by the way, is an emotional journey. This is simple enough. It really is simple once you grab it. The problem is the word patient experience gets thrown around too much and doesn't get defined. But your patient's experience is an emotional journey within your life cycle within your business. So as they're going through your life cycle within their business, there is an experience created. And what I like to tell people is patients are having an experience, whether you have created it or not. So my challenge is you better go out and create it, right? Just saw a great post I got tagged in on LinkedIn last night about a doctor who's got a child with a chronic illness and loves the doctor that they go to. And he wrote it all out on LinkedIn. He says, I rarely share this personal stuff. Constantly having to go back to the doctor because of his child's chronic illness and getting prescriptions filled. He then said that today he went into the doctor's office and told this doctor that he was going to fire them, and here is why. It had zero to do with the care. It had everything to do with the experience. Late, starting late, seeing the patient late, getting links to telehealth visits after the scheduled time, prescriptions showing up at wrong pharmacies, right? Now, if you mapped out this life cycle and knew that you would be moving people to this and you understood this, then you would drop the systems in place to make sure that these mistakes don't happen. Because when those mistakes happen, those lead to a negative experience. And those are why people, right? And he says in the post, a doctor is totally competent. It is I don't think he said experience. He didn't say the word specifically. But when you read, right, the frustration, right, the time lost, it's all emotional. That's what people share. Think about it. When people ask you or a friend for a referral somewhere, right? Oh, we need a good Mexican restaurant, right? They rarely ask if the food is good. Oh, we love this place, right? The servers always remember us. They seat us on time. They have great margaritas. And then you go. They don't walk you through the menu. They don't ask you what you're looking for on the menu. They tell you about their experience. One of my favorite things to do is to go in and read reviews of physical therapy clinics on Google, on Yelp, on anywhere, and look at the reviews that are written. They're all experience-based. Well, one of my challenges always is I like to go through and read the review. I read it through once and then I read it through again and I try to answer this question. Do I know if the patient got better or not? Because I argue 50% of the time, they don't share whether they got better. They say, great, I got exercises for home. They really focused on me. The front desk took care of my scheduling needs. No surprise billing. I would recommend this place over anybody. And you're like, getting better didn't matter. When you asked them to write a review that they would share with other people, they didn't write, they got me better, period. Think about that for a second. Yeah, focus on the patient experience. And Karen, hopefully you were here from the beginning, because also The point of this is you got to map out that patient life cycle first. You cannot focus on their experience unless you understand their life cycle. So again, let me double back to where we started this. If you ask me for a script or for customer service training, we can't build an experience within your company if we don't know the step before and where they're going from here. The objective of phase 2, which is that phase owned by your front desk in your patient life cycle. Now think about this. So we have this physical map, this patient life cycle, and we have phase 2. It's from first contact to patient arrival. So, right, all physical, just the touch points and interactions. We now say, what experience do we want to create during this phase 2? Well, when we say that, we do it with the end in mind, this completed plan of care. So then we get to, what are the objectives? Check this out. What are the objectives of phase 2 in your patient's life cycle? The objectives of phase 2 are to start to build a relationship that will last throughout their entire life cycle. Okay, if I'm going to start a relationship and keep it going, that means I'm going to have to stay in touch, right? I'm going to have to understand where this person is in their life cycle at all times. Number 2 is be a problem solver. That means I go away from getting people scheduled because I realize the end result is a completed plan of care, and that this journey with me doesn't end when they get on the schedule. And that's a whole nother Facebook Live. This term, get people scheduled, and what it does to your front desk, it sets them up for failure. The last thing is to set the provider up for success. And the only way you can know what that means as a front desk person, as a front desk manager, as an owner, is if you understand what this completed plan of care looks like. So what information do I need to gather and collect to pass on to my providers? So thank you, Karen, for throwing that out there. So the key takeaways from today are the patient life cycle is the further upstream, is the work that needs to be done to create. Watch this, we'll step it down. Create and map out, map out your patient's life cycle within your business. So that is the work to be done so that you can start to create the patient experience that you want your potential patients and patients to have within your business. Because remember, your patients are having an experience with your company, whether you create it or not. Then and only then, when you're creating that, can we start to get into the weeds and talk about customer service training, training front desk, training providers. I train providers. What do you do with this information that was collected on the first phone call 10 days ago? How do we take that information and leverage that into our relationship with this person who's sitting across from me, right? Who called 10 days ago, who walks in the room and now understands without asking that we all communicate here, that it's about them, that there is trust here. We cannot do all this in the weed work until we go all the way back and go, what is the life cycle? What are these touch points? Right? Because I've done work with people and not being able to find the clinic on the eval day has been one of the deal killers. So what do? We walk that upstream. Make sure they can find the clinic. Paperwork kills relationships. Unexpected bills kill relationships. Well, unless you know the patient life cycle and the experience you want to create, then you can't fix those problems. You're going to be constantly fighting that battle. You're going to go to your billing team for all the billing issues, right? All the cancels, you're going to yell at your front desk. I'm like, we just need to make these disappear, and we make them disappear by having this conversation way earlier and making sure they know. And we have decreased fear, doubt, and uncertainty and built a lot of trust before they ever arrive. That is the single best way to improve your cancel rate. The best way to improve your cancel rate is to understand their phase 2 of the life cycle, right? Then understanding the experience is around decreasing fear, doubt, and uncertainty. So what can I do around the cancel rate to do that? Okay, so front desk success, patient success, business success flows down from understanding your patient's life cycle, then building out the experience you want them to have within your business so that patients, before they're ever a patient, and by the time your front desk hangs up the phone, knows that they'll arrive, pay, stay, and do your marketing with you. That all flows down from understanding your patient's life cycle.